Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the Greenskins against the High Elves on the map Northern Chaos Wastes. So the Greenskins have been definitely, according to many, definitely got the short end of the stick in Mortal Empires, but in this matchup I'm simply going for a little bit of a silly build, trying to make a few of those weird spells work for the Greenskins. So I did bring a Goblin Great Shaman as my lord, and definitely that's, I think, the first indicator that things are a little unusual with Night Shroud. So for this composition, I did want to try to stealth in a Ragnarok Queen and see if I can sneak up on my opponent. And so I did bring a Goblin Great Shaman, and what I did was I brought brought a Goblin Great Shaman as my lord, simply trying to cut costs in the lord department. Obviously, the Goblin Great Shaman is not a good lord by any means at all, in any way except the fact that he can cast spells somewhat effectively. He does have access to Sneaky Stealing, of course, which is now a debuff that hits when you're casting, map-wide debuff. He does have Evasion, which gives him great melee defense, and Speed Boost, which he needs because he needs to stay alive against a lot of great big nasties. Basically anything the High Elves bring could slaughter this guy in melee. He does have pretty pitiful melee stats, though he does have 98 speed because he's on a wolf mount. He also does have a monstrous charge bonus of 50. I obviously did bring Sneaky Stabbing as well as Sneaky Stealing, which are, in my opinion, two of the best spells in the game just for their utility and cheapness. And of course then Arcane Conduit just to get Winds of Magic as much as I can. So very cheap lord here, very mobile, and hopefully efficient. Over on this flank we do have a Goblin Big Boss, of course mounted on a Spider just to get that poison damage. Once again, not great stats in most ways, but I did kind of a bodyguard hero, kind of because he does have slippery and speed, and hoping to combo him with the Broken Tusk mob, which is the Regiment of Renown Orc Boar Boy Big Guns, who of course do have pretty decent stats. They have a bonus against large, charge bonus of 50, and 90 armor, which is actually great against High Elves who don't tend to have a lot of armor-piercing anti-large options. Outside, of course, Phoenix Guard, but hopefully we don't plow them into a unit of those. You can see I've stocked my Ragnarok Queen here. My front line is composed of 2 Savage Orcs as well as the Warlords Boys, who are the Armor Sundering variant of Night Goblins. Behind that we do have 2 units of Black Orcs as well as the Crimson Killers, who I'm hoping will slice and dice their way through the enemy front line, whatever it might be. And behind that, once again, we do have a unit of Goblin Archers as well as the Rusty Arrows, who are Night Goblin Archers with Armor Sundering. So definitely hoping to have some pressure on the enemy backline, pressure on enemy flyers, and that sort of stuff. In the very back, we do have a single unit of Nasty Skulkers, who of course do have Smoke Bomb and can hopefully trap enemy lords on the ground where they cannot escape. For my opponent, he did go very wide, and with a very solid build here. He does have, for his lord, he does have a princess mounted on a Star Dragon. She does of course have decent range damage with the obviously not the greatest armor-piercing missile damage, but she can do good amounts of poke damage. She has great melee attack, melee defense, weapon strength, of course a breath attack with Star Dragon Breath, and then of course Foe Seeker just to get in and out of trouble a little faster. And with Fear and Terror, that's a huge problem for Orcs to deal with. On the ground, my opponent does have 4 units of White Lions of Krace, backed by 2 units of Spearmen. These guys will not win against Black Orcs, but nonetheless they can definitely hack and slash their way through Savage Orcs and Goblins, and there's a lot of them, or there's more of them than my Black Orcs, so definitely they could lay a little bit of smackdown on me. Alongside that, my opponent does have a single unit of Dragon Princes, who I do believe will outtrade the Broken Tusk mob, though I'm not entirely sure about that. And I'm fairly sure that with the Goblin backing of the Goblin Big Boss, these guys can definitely win. But I'm simply not entirely sure how the balance goes with the Dragon Princes. Here you can see my Ragnarok Queen is still not spotted, but I do now kind of spot the dragon. I will be shifting her, trying to get over on the right flank to engage over there on the Dragon Princes. In my opponent's backline, he does have 3 units of Archers. Obviously, the unarmored variant, no Lothran Seaguard or anything like that. Honestly, normal Archers perfectly adequate against Orcs. The only problem is, of course, that they don't have much armor piercing, so against Black Orcs they will not do a great job at all. My opponent also does have a Mage of Life with Stone Skin, Regrowth, and Earthblood, as well as a unit of Swordmasters of Hoeth and a unit of Spears covering the backline. So throwing things in full gear here, you can see the Archers are teeing off, getting a few shots here and there into the Goblin Big Boss. Interestingly enough, High Elf Archers will actually be getting a nerf to their accuracy come next patch. You can see I do pull my Savage Orcs back a little bit here, trying to keep them slightly protected from the arrow fire as I push forward with the Black Orcs, who I want to be taking the brunt of the fire and just getting into melee and slicing and dicing their way through that enemy force. Unfortunately, my Ragnarok Spider is at this point revealed, so definitely the stock didn't really do very much for me. That was 9 Winds of magic down the drain for no real gain, but it's okay. It was worth a try. And now we are pushing in with the Black Orcs. You can see the Savage Orcs here following up behind. My opponent did waste a handful of arrows on the Black Orcs, but really it's not going to do very much. Or really, it's not helping too much because my opponent will shortly retarget on the Savage Orcs. As mentioned before, supposedly the High Elf archers are supposed to be getting an accuracy nerf, and we'll definitely see how that impacts the game. You can see I'm trying to be a little careful here with the Goblin Big Boss, not wanting to plow the Ragnarok Queen in just yet. She does have monstrous armor at 150, so the spears will honestly not do that great against her. My opponent actually doesn't have too many answers against the Queen there. The White Lines of Crace here getting sliced and diced up by the Black Orcs, so obviously 2 to 1 they'll do okay. Crimson Killers here in the fray, chopping their way through these White Lines incredibly quickly, because of course these guys do have splash damage. You can see a Flesh to Stone going down these White Lines of Crace, even as the Savage Orcs and the Warlords Boys are plowing in. You can see over here my opponent does whiff a breath attack on the Ragnarok Queen. Just plowing the Spearmen and starts causing some damage. Over here you can see Savage Orcs trying to push past them, trying to get on top of my opponent's archers, and trying to get my own archers into gear as well as these nasty Skulkers. You can see the Crimson Killers have now buckled the front line and are going to be able to push through. And you can see the archery fire coming in on the White Lines of Crace. Obviously the White Lines do have that 30% magic missile resist. Over here the Boar Boys, I actually have gotten the charge into the Dragon Princes. They did not get their charge off, and we do of course have poison going off, though my opponent does cast an Earth Blood to try to keep his Dragon Princes in the fray. Definitely helping out. As in my turn, I do cast Sneaky Stab in on the Broken Tusk Mob, trying to get extra damage into him, into these Dragon Princes who are getting sliced and diced up. The Ragnarok Queen does get a rear charge here, and that will hopefully really break these guys and bring them to heal. See, they're definitely not having the best time of it. The Spearmen are causing some damage, but simply put, these guys don't have armor piercing, so against both the Boar Boy Big Guns with their 90 armor, as well as of course the Ragnarok Queen at 150, they were doing very little. Over here the White Lines of Crace getting peppered down by arrow fire. Black Orcs here winning against the White Lines. You can see the Crimson Killers have now plowed through, I do believe it's 2 units of White Lines, and are now cutting their way through Spearmen, so definitely some monstrous work here. You can see I do finally try to get my nasty Skulkers into the fray, that they are shortly going to rout, because they simply don't have the morale, and they've been taking archery fire while I wasn't paying attention. Over here the Swordmasters of Hoeth doing some monstrous work, chopping their way through these Black Orcs. They're one of the few units that the High Elves have that will trade effectively with Black Orcs. I'm actually fairly sure Swordmasters will win. Though of course you can see the Black Orcs are just monsters with their massive HP per model. They're just incredibly tanky and very hard to bring down for a faction that doesn't have armor-piercing projectiles. Spearmen here are obviously causing some damage, so what I'm trying to do is just trying to disengage here with the Broken Tusk Mob and get on top of these Dragon Princes. My opponent is still poking away at me with his annoying princes, but I can't do anything about that, so I do try to kind of push the Ragnarok Spider through and get on my opponent's flank. These Savage Orcs are going to get pincered and collapse fairly quickly, but the Ragnarok Queen definitely doing some damage. You can see I've cast some Spider Hatchlings over here just to keep applying pressure to my opponent's backline, try to keep these archers tied down, and slowly but surely whittle them down. The Black Orcs tag team these poor Spearmen and absolutely crush them. They're just getting demolished. You can see the archers here getting demolished by my own archery, actually. It's a little surprising. And surely these nasty Skulkers will hopefully rally and come back, as will the Warlords Boys over here. Over here in the pits, you can see the White Lines of Crace did rally a little bit and apply some pressure to the Black Orcs, who are still hacking and slashing their way through the enemy front line. Of course, do have these Savage Orcs here in reserve, so if things do go south, and the Black Orcs start, and the Black Orcs, sorry about that, guys, and the Black Orcs get slaughtered, Savage Orcs will still do well. And you can see actually the Swordmasters of Hoeth, despite being at 38 models, the Black Orcs 17, are actually at a comparable situation right now, HP-wise. And once my own archery starts coming in, they will definitely not be in a good spot. Unfortunately, there's a dragon in amongst my archers, and the only counters I really have right now are the nasty Skulkers as well as the Savage Orcs. Over here you can see the Broken Tusk Mob has been rounded off, though in their turn my opponent's units are definitely falling apart. You can see the White Lines of Crace being tear-routed. My big boss is tying down these Dragon Princes, and now they are kind of pushing into these White Lines, or not the White Lines, they're pushing into these Crimson Killers. But Crimson Killers, while definitely not intended to fight cavalry, their splash is much more intended at massed infantry. You can see they're huge. These guys are massive. They're almost as tall. They're actually, think these guys are bigger than these Dragon Princes. They're actually going to drag these guys into the muck just fine. They're monstrous melee stats, and you can see these poor Dragon Princes are just not standing a chance, as these blood and gore soaked Crimson Killers are hacking and slashing their way through the Dragon Princes, and you can see they bring them down to heal very, very quickly. So absolutely brutal. You can see the Gobbo Shaman is still running away around, being supportive, and definitely things are looking a little bit grim for the High Elves here. Though of course things are nowhere near done. Over here the Savage Orcs are still slugging out with the Swordmasters. The Savage Orcs do have okay armor piercing. I do believe it's like 8 damage of their swift, actually 9 damage in this armor piercing. So they can definitely do some hurt, and now with the armor sundering coming in from the Warlords Boys, they'll do great against the Swordmasters. One of the important things to keep in mind actually when dealing with High Elf infantry is that not even Phoenix Guard has the greatest of armor. High Elves are definitely not the most armor heavy faction. they're much more reliant on various sort of ward saves or resistances and shields and that sort of stuff. So if you can bypass those somehow, then you're in a very good position. Over here in the pits, you can see my Goblin Big Boss and all of them doing great work. You can see, unfortunately, I mess up and I stop microing my Ragnarok Queen, and because of that, she does get roasted here very, very badly. Obviously, the Ragnarok Queen simply doesn't have the most... the Ragnarok Queen does have a good amount of HP, but she's obviously now at this point she's been reduced to very low HP. I'm trying to get her here into the back of these spearmen, just try to rout them off a little bit, and with her help, obviously the Savage Orcs and the Spiderlings will be able to win. Spiderlings have been doing some monstrous work here. You can see these guys are up to 3 kills here. These Spiderlings over here tying down the Mage of Life. And over here in the back line, my opponent is definitely, the Princess is definitely trying to tie down the Rusty Arrows. I will be able to bog her down, and my Nasty Skulkers are coming back online. Kind of recovering my troops left and right. Over here, the Black Orcs are still pursuing the archers. You can see I got my Goblin Big Boss into my enemy's archer line back here, and the Big Boss, while obviously not great at doing damage, will still do fairly well against low-end infantry like archers. I'm actually using my Goblin and Great Shaman, still with Arcane Conduit going, to chase down enemy archers, to try to get them off the field. You can see the same thing going on with my Broken Tusk Mob, which is now down to 4 models, and actually stuck around, which is actually really impressive. You don't see that very often with the Orc Cavalry, that they stick around, even the high veterancy ones, that they stick around this well. That means that my opponent is at this point reduced to just a handful of troops. He does have his Princess, who does dive in here to try to support these Spearmen, going in after the Ragnarok Queen and landing one meaty hit here. You can see, oh my goodness, the Ragnarok Queen losing about 500 HP there. But I do turn around, I do start engaging on this Princess, realizing I'm not really going to be able to retreat. I do have my Spiderlings continue chasing the spears and tithing them down, even as the Ragnarok Queen starts slugging it out with the Princess. And I actually was convinced that the Ragnarok Queen was going to rout here, but surprisingly, she actually does stabilize as the Savage Orcs do come in. One of the cool things about the Ragnarok Queen is that she does actually have a really solid melee attack at 67 and decent melee attack defense at 40, which against the melee attack of debuffed now by Itchy Nuisance melee attack of 34, well, the Princess is really not too great, and I'm going to be able to simply just buff my troops here. The smoke bomb goes off from the Skulkers, and you can see I do buff her up here with Sneaky Stab, and my opponent's army does at this point shatter and rout. So, just a few takeaways I had from this game, and I'm not entirely sure this is the most competitive Orc build. It was just fun. A few takeaways was that I really didn't get much value out of the stealth at all. I probably should have used it instead on the Black Orcs a few seconds before engaging or pushing in, simply because it would have meant that, for example, my Crimson Killers wouldn't take any ranged fire. That was definitely, I think, a bit of a mistake. I actually don't think the spiders are necessarily bad, especially not the Ragnarok Queen against the High Elves, because you get a bunch of charges of those Spiderlings, which is kind of like a zombie summon. It lets you tie down enemy archers and enemy shooting. They are small, so even Loth and Seaguard will not be able to wipe them out quickly, because they don't get that bonus against large against them. The Ragnarok Queen herself is actually incredibly resistant to the vast majority of what the High Elves put on the table, unless they go after you with Star Dragons or Phoenix Guard. There's not really much the Elves can do that'll kill the Ragnarok Queen in an efficient manner. She just has too much armor, and obviously she has poison, and she's a decent duelist in general, so just definitely not a pushover choice. I definitely think the Ragnarok Queen's not bad. Just gotta make sure to keep her moving so you don't get hit by those nasty breath attacks, because obviously Orcs have no healing. The Goblin Great Shaman has actually surprised me by being a pretty efficient Lord. He wasn't particularly good as far as actually doing damage goes. He got 11 kills, which was impressive. A lot of that just chasing groups out the field. But most importantly, he just had those spells that he could constantly be casting, debuffing my opponent's power recharge rate. I'm not sure how effective that was, and just so useful with Sneaky Stabbing and Itchy Nuisance are just so very powerful. The Goblin Big Boss, once again, great job at just shutting things down. Nasty Skulkers were probably my biggest letdown in this game, and a lot of that just came down to my own fault. I didn't really utilize them correctly, and I allowed them to sit in the enemy archery fire until they were down to about half HP, which was a huge problem. The rest of this army, definitely not bad. I'm not entirely sure the Savage Orcs were a great pick as well. High Elves have a lot of low AP shooting that shreds Savage Orcs pretty effectively. The Archers did pretty well. The Black Orcs did some great work. Black Orcs are just amazing as High Elves, honestly. They outtrade the White Lions incredibly decisively, and they trade with Swordmasters in a fairly efficient manner. Especially if you give them buffs, especially with the buffs like Sneaky Stabbing or Itchy Nuisance or things like that. Finally, the Broken Tusk Mob actually performed rather well. I do think the Broken Tusk Mob is a much better choice against High Elves than normal Orc Boar Waving Guns, simply because these guys have armor, and obviously High Elf Cav does not have armor piercing, just doesn't have armor piercing. And High Elf shooting, once again, is only archer, so if your opponent snares you, if you have 90 armor, you'll be a little tankier against that. And these guys actually did a good job. They only got 20 kills, but honestly, they were dealing with Dragon Princes, which are a higher-end unit, and they had to fight off the enemy Lord. And definitely were doing a great job in the pits there. It's definitely nice. For my opponent's build, I definitely don't think it's bad. Perhaps a bit of a, perhaps I think a little bit of a, I'm not even sure. I don't think there was much that was wrong with his build. Simply they got very heavily out-traded by the Black Orcs. Definitely I think a little reliant on getting good value out of the terror-causing units and that sort of stuff. But definitely I don't think a bad build. But it's one of the, and if I had, for example, brought Azak, who's a much more expensive lord, and would have resulted in me having a much thinner front line, or perhaps being forced to drop a unit of Black Orcs or something like that. This army would have probably been much more efficient, simply because if I tried to do Fate of Buna, he could simply counteract me with 3 growth, and so it could have just been, I think, a bit more potent there. Regardless, great game to my opponent. I do hope you guys, Lazavik here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about the game or anything like that, be sure to post them in the comments and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.